hello to those of you who will be listening in and watching the recording. And welcome to another Top IG Professional Development session. Today we will have the most interesting subject of using ChatGPT for the instruction of pronunciation. I'm very curious to hear what that could look like. My name is Patryk Mrozek. I'm one of the co-coordinators for the Teachers of Pronunciation Top IG interest group, and I have my lovely co-coordinators here with me. I have and
Hello, I'm
Randy
Marcia.
Reitmeyer. Yes,
So you said
amazing.
lovely. I thought that was my cue.
It was. You're right. And Marsha and Randy and everyone, if you would kindly introduce yourselves in the chat. So if I could ask everyone to type in your name, where you're based, where you're from, and this time, just today, I would like everyone to answer these three questions. Have you used ChatGPT? Have you used ChatGPT in the classroom? And have you used it to teach pronunciation? Meanwhile, I would like to go over some means of communication that are available to members of CATESOL and non-members alike. We have the official Top IG message board that you can access through the CATESOL website, but you can also send us an email to get in touch through CATESOL top at catesol.org. And for members and non-members alike, you can also get in touch with us through the Facebook top group. So if you're a Facebook user, feel free to join the top group and get updates on our events and interesting topics related to pronunciation. We have a Padlet as well, and on the Padlet, you can find some of our recorded webinars and conference presentations. Also, keep up to date with all sorts of news, communication, and upcoming events from us. And finally, there's one more link I wanted to share with everyone. We started a newsletter, and that is available to everyone. If you click the tiny URL and fill in a short Google form, we'll be sending you monthly updates on our webinars, events. We promise not to spam you. We're not going to be sending a lot of info, but this is a great way to hear about our events directly through email, and make sure that you don't miss any of these amazing webinars. So I also wanted to share the great news that now the membership in CATESOL, for those of you who are not members, is now only at a flat rate of $30 annually. So you can become a member with us for 1 year for the very low price of $30. That was just changed, and I think it's definitely worth it. I've learned so much through CATESOL, and I've met so many amazing TESOL professionals and fantastic people. I really think that this is an amazing organization. So please consider. And I'm actually based in Portland, Oregon right now. They let me keep my membership and my position as co-coordinator. So you don't necessarily have to be in California to be involved with CATESOL. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful speaker today, Beata Walesiak. Based in Warsaw, Poland. Beata is the former linguist at ELSA Speak. She has worked as a teacher trainer, and researcher, specializing in pronunciation and technology-supported teaching. She's taught in academia in both Poland and Scotland, worked as a certified examiner and presented at conferences, conventions, and teacher training events in Poland, Russia, the UK, and now in the United States, in California, virtually. Um, she's also a volunteer at the IA TEFL Consig Committee. And I hear that she is an apple orchard owner, which maybe she'll tell us a little bit more about that. So, Beata, thank you so much for presenting on this fascinating subject today. And the floor, or I guess in this case, screen share capabilities are yours now.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. This is me. This is Beata. You can call me Beata, Beata, whichever way you prefer. I'm from Poland, and actually, I'm right now based in Warka, which is to the south of Warsaw, and where I happen to have this apple orchard. So if you are around Warka or Warsaw, or even in somewhere remotely in Poland, let's say around September, October, ping me, send me an email. I can arrange for a few apples, for a few crates. Actually, we have quite a lot, although we're little apple orchard with my husband. So if you think of apple orchard owners in this area, there's lots of them, and they have much more, many more apples in their basket, so to speak. Thank you for that. Now I'll start sharing. Okay, so I called this presentation, that was the title, ChatGPT for Teachers of Pronunciation. And when I got the invite, I was really happy that you guys agreed to me talking to you about it, because it's a big topic right now. It got a lot of hype, and ChatGPT is a name that many people believe will be the name of 2023. We will see how it goes. And thank you for answering the questions in the chat box. I've had a look at it, and I'm happy to see that many of you have answered with no, which is actually great, because at least now I see that there is a point of me being here. But if you've answered with yes, I hope you will still learn something, find something useful in this presentation. Let's move on. So first, I'm going to give you some information about AI in general, and then I'll move to pronunciation-related GPT examples. So everything that you see at the very top over here, basics, capabilities, limitations, and prompt engineering, will be more theoretical, but I hope useful as well. And then I'll be showing you some of my own examples. And then I will finish off with some AI integrations, external tools, and then suggest some pedagogical implications. I hope you'll survive the whole hour with me. My motivation for this talk stems from the fact that I am designing a course on learning pronunciation with the help of AI at Open University. That's my alma mater. And I would like to run it January next year. I've been running, I think I run like 70 courses over there for large groups of students, usually around 28 to 32 people in each group. And they are of mixed abilities, because these are adult learners. So I am in a group of students. I may have people who are really lower level students and highly advanced students, but all of them want to learn pronunciation. A little bit of the motivation behind this presentation comes from a few of my fellow teachers, colleagues of mine, who teach and often struggle with finding the right materials, especially when they need to figure out context for a very difficult word. There'll be some examples coming from medical English in the slides. In a moment, you'll see especially one word. I hope you don't mind the choice. But these friends desperately need to find alternative resources, and they often use real life materials. And on the basis of that, they need to create some of their own materials for the courses. Or let's start with the basics. I assume more or less we have heard of the term AI, but I'll just repeat that if you let me. So what is generative AI? So these are the systems that have had lots of data pumped into them. And those clever engineers and developers have looked for, NLP people too, have looked into patterns in this data, and they figured out that there is a way to produce something out of that. And generative AI models, they basically produce output such as text. And here we have the infamous ChatGPT. We also have Bard. I'll mention that in a moment. And if you like cats, and I am a fan of a particular black and white cat, who is my own cat called Valeri, then you can also use a tool called CatGPT. It's just enough to go to Google and just type CatGPT. I'm sure you'll find it. Don't be surprised that CatGPT replies with meows most of the time. If you're thinking about generative AI models, you can also produce images. And the two most famous ones, I think, is DALL-E, which is a model produced by OpenAI, the company who also invented ChatGPT, and another one called Stable Diffusion. I'll show you a little bit of it later on. You can also create with generative AI video. And one of the most recently trending tools is Flawless AI. They have released a clip in which their AI uses 3D modeling and removes, I don't know, maybe you have seen it. There's an actress, who says something, and the generative AI removes her speech, her words, and on top of that, it makes her say different words in English, and then at the same, like in real time, it's possible to make the actress say the same thing, but in Spanish and in Japanese, I believe. So yeah, such things are now possible with generative AI. And then there are also some attempts at brainwaves. So there are AI models for brainwaves. There was a video released, there's been a video released recently online by connected to company Emotive AI. And these guys have headsets. They put headsets on people's heads, just regular headsets they can buy online. They cost a couple of hundreds of dollars. And basically with these headsets, apparently you can control video games. So you're fighting with someone and you're not using your hands or anything. You're basically thinking about it. And the AI knows that you are thinking about it. So sorry, just a general introduction as far as generative AI models are concerned. Large data systems, and they are able to output very fabulous, quite fabulous things. Now, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That's a language model developed by OpenAI. And the transformer is an interesting concept, if you ever heard it. It's like a neural, it's a neural network architecture. And it just captures these patterns and dependencies between words and produces accurate predictions in forms of the text. What is interesting is that those GPT models, they can learn. So you feed them with a lot of data, but then they learn also from what you as a user gave them. This is called reinforcement learning from human feedback. The first GPT was released in 2018. Right now, it's 2023. We have GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 available. And they are available in ChatGPT. And what is ChatGPT? A ChatGPT is like a chatbot. It's a web app that is able to generate human-like responses. It's a conversational application, and it relies on these GPT models. It's available at the website chatopenai.com. So in the chat box right now, I'm just putting the most important link for today. If anyone feels like not listening to me too much and trying certain things for yourselves, you can go straight to chat.openai.com and you can play with it at will. Just pay attention to one thing. Chatopenai.com, so ChatGPT is a free app, provided that you register with it, and there's a two-step two-factor authentication. This is the so-called 3.5 default model. And if you pay around $20 per month, it's 20 plus tax, then you may access the GPT-4 model, which has been trained on millions and millions of data, more than 3.5. And this is when you're dealing with ChatGPT Plus. That's the service that is available. So there you go. We've got the basic terms settled. Now time for ChatGPT to introduce itself. I asked a very simple question, meaning who are you? And ChatGPT has replied with, I am ChatGPT, an AI language model developed by OpenAI. one disclaimer here. This presentation is rather text heavy, and I hope you won't mind, but we're dealing with ChatGPT, which is text heavy. It's a text model, language model. So I'm sorry that there's going to be some screenshots, quite a lot of them, but I'll try to read and summarize a few interesting points in each slide. What is interesting for you right now is to pay attention to the icon over here. That's ChatGPT 3.5. You've got this green sort of emoji-like icon. When you ask the same question, when you direct the same question to the ChatGPT 4, GPT-4 model, then you see that purple icon, and that's how you know that this is the paid model, right? The plus license model. And as you can see, the model has been trained on much more data, and it's able to provide quite lengthy answers. ChatGPT 3.5 does provide them too, but this one kind of pumps a lot of language into you, unless you prevent it. But we'll learn that later on. There's also another very trendy generative AI example right now on the market. It was released a couple of weeks ago. It's called Bard, and Bard was created by Google on a slightly different model. So it's not ChatGPT language model. It's called Lambda. It's a language model for dialogue applications, and Google praises that they invented in 2017. And what is important that they were, like earlier, that was earlier than ChatGPT, than OpenAI. But this model can search the web, unlike ChatGPT, and it's now available in over 180 plus countries. There's a full list in the slides. I'm leaving you a link, so if you click on the underlined words, you'll get a link to the full list of these countries. And I'm sure if you're joining us from America, you'll be on the list. But unfortunately, myself, I will not be able how to create a fast, balanced vegetarian meal for myself, because Bard is not supported in my country. So I need to stay tuned. However, if you wanted to check Bard, bardgoogle.com, that would be a thing. So my presentation is unfortunately not about Bard. I hope you don't mind. But maybe in the future, who knows, when I finally get the chance to use it. Of course, I could be using that on VPN, but I'd rather not. Now, for capabilities limitations, let me speed up a little bit, not to bore you to death. Those of you who have used ChatGPT, you probably know that already. ChatGPT is like a chef in the kitchen. It can communicate with us in over 80 languages, English, Polish, French, Japanese, whichever of the main languages you prefer. It asks questions, it explains ideas, it translates, it can edit. It's a great proofreading tool. When I write something, I like to give it to ChatGPT and ask it to have a look at it. I'm a non-native speaker, so I sometimes am a bit anxious about how I write. So when there's an important thing like an application letter, for example, I've asked ChatGPT to have a look at it. I'm happy when ChatGPT says only 2 mistakes have been found. It can assist us when we're teaching English. It can assist us in grammar correction, in paraphrasing, in sentence completion. It also summarizes, plans, offers suggestions, and can brainstorm with you. If you say, ChatGPT, could you brainstorm this idea with me? It can provide lots of useful suggestions. It's also a poetry writer. It's also a story writer. There are lots of presentations about it online. If you go to YouTube, I'm sure you're going to find some examples. And it also generates tables, and I'll show you a little bit of that later on. But primarily it writes code. So it also performs debugging, so it can tell a developer, a programmer that a particular code is wrong, or it may disagree with the developer. But for me, I'm not a super duper coder. I know a little bit of Python and a few other things, but I struggle a lot. And ChatGPT can explain code to me. So it's enough to put some code and ChatGPT explains. What is interesting is that it also remembers what was said in conversation earlier on in the same conversation, and it should decline inappropriate requests, but that's a bit of a problem. Right now, and again, another disadvantage for me, I'm an Android phone holder, not an iOS phone holder. So luckily for those of you who use iOS in their phones, you can now use ChatGPT on the phone. And I promise that if you stay with me until the end, you'll see how it works. There will be a special feature. Speaking about features, there are some beta features in ChatGPT Plus, the one that uses GPT-4 as a model. And there's a saving chat history. but also something called third-party plugins. So right now, and I'm like, to be honest, I'm not even sure if the data that I'm going to give you right now is valid. There's over 120 plugins, but literally 3 days ago, there were only 100 of them. And each of those plugins is created by an external company. And they are sort of plugged into ChatGPT, and they have various functionalities. You can follow news, you can cook, so that produces recipes, and you can also do something else, but I'll leave you hanging, I'm sorry. I'll show you what those plugins do for us. But what is important, you need to think about who you're sharing the data with. When you're using these plugins, you're actually sending the data externally. So this is quite an important point here. Limitations. It has capabilities, it also has limitations. As I said, it remembers only a given session. So if you want to say, hey, do you remember what we were talking about 3 days ago? It may say that it will hallucinate. It may say that it does, but it won't be able to bring it back. You'd have to go into that conversation, which is saved on the left-hand side of the screen. And it relies heavily on prompt phrasing. So prompts, I'll be explaining them later on. As far as the default model is concerned, the GPT 3.5, it was trained on the data and the knowledge cutoff in September 2021. So, for example, it won't know about the conflict in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. It doesn't know. You'd have to tell it, you'd have to explain and provide additional text. The knowledge cut off in September 2021. But the GPT-4 model has the ChatGPT Plus that you pay for, has the functionality of web browsing, or is this functionality is being introduced. It doesn't really work well. I've tried it and didn't work that well. So it may kind of browse a few things on Bing. Yeah, so that's ChatGPT actually explaining it to me that it doesn't have access to events, data, or information from the year 2023, in case you wanted to ask what happened yesterday. And it hallucinates. I've used that term. And remember that little green face over here? You may see it from time to time in my slides. Hallucinations are those moments when ChatGPT provides quite a factually relevant answer, but it's actually incorrect, or it's unrelated, or it just produces certain interesting things, also for pronunciation. So you'll see a little bit of that, but it sounds pretty good, to be honest. And you may actually believe it. What is also important as a limitation is that if you want to invest in the GPT-4 model, so the ChatGPT Plus, you're only going to be able to put in 25 messages every 3 hours. That's based on demand. OpenAI is going to change it probably one day, but for now, this is the cap. And you get this, as you can see on the screen, you get this information piece that says that you've reached the current usage cap for GPT-4. And so when I was preparing a few things for this talk, I had to wait, especially in the evening. I like to sit in the evening to prepare stuff. And I had to literally wait till the next day in order for my cap to come back, for me to be able to use GPT-4. And the final thing from the theoretical sort of aspects, general AI, I've also added into the slides a slide about ethics and detector tools. I thought that, for pronunciation, that's not really relevant to us right now, but maybe for other aspects of teaching English or teaching anything, you'd like to have a look. So if you'd like to learn more about ethics, myself, I managed to do a course. It's an online course by University of Helsinki. It's called Ethics of AI. Very useful course. It takes about a couple of days to do it, but it's free of charge. So you may sign up. If you just click on the Ethics of AI course by University of Helsinki, this will take you to their website. If you want to learn more about ethics, there's EU ethical guidelines, and for the world, there's UNESCO Ethics of AI. There's a lot of, there's a bill being prepared to counteract, and I know that some things are also happening in the States right now as far as AI is concerned. If you happen to teach something else in pronunciation and you'd like to use some detector tools, there's GPT-0, ZeroGPT, or Turnitin. And also there's a new classifier by OpenAI, the company which created ChatGPT. It's called OpenAI's classifier, or just text classifier, but it has low reliability for identifying AI versus human. So they even report on that. And so you may assume there are lots of false positives. So it may actually say that the text was written by a human, whereas it was actually written by a machine, or the other way around. So you need to be very wary of the whole thing. I'll move to prompt engineering. Which sounds super fancy, but this is in fact the idea of how to talk to ChatGPT. So prompt engineering is just putting these little questions or tasks for ChatGPT into the command line. That's it. Okay, how to explain prompt engineering? Well, actually, I have already, right? But we can do it with DALL-E, and DALL-E is an image model created by OpenAI. And if you put the term pronunciation into DALL-E, DALL-E creates images. These could be photos, graphics, 3D-like photos, cartoons, you name it. And then if you put the term pronunciation, so you see one word only, that's what you get. These are 4 different images that DALL-E creates. DALL-E is not a free tool. You need to pay for it. So you have a particular amount of credits that you buy. And on the like with these credits, you can create a particular number of illustrations. So these are the images. And you can already see that they're not, well, they are photos, but they don't really, do they really show us what pronunciation is? To some extent, perhaps. You can also see that the model itself doesn't really cope well with faces, hands, and it doesn't show us any words. So that was pronunciation. Now, let's try a longer prompt, teaching pronunciation. That's 2 words. Let's see if we get some more complex images. Well, that actually resembles teaching pronunciation to some extent. But again, the faces won't look that well. And again, the words won't be there. So I'm just trying to show you that the longer the prompt, the more you can actually expect from the language model. So what I did, I put in the command of DALL-E, I put a request to show me what a 3D photo of a Polish teacher of English who is conducting a webinar for teachers of pronunciation on the functionalities of ChatGPT would look like. And this is what it produced. So this is me actually talking to you right now. Yeah, there you go. I don't mind. I think it's actually quite relevant to some extent. I just need to think of the glasses perhaps, and I should be wearing a white shirt, I think. So this is the sort of ideal image of myself right now. I've also tried, this is just a additional comment, I've also tried the same thing with the other image generator called Stable Diffusion Web. I've put in the same input and look what it has produced. Again, 4 different images. These ones looked a little bit more real, I would say. Fun fact, I don't wear glasses. So in here, the glasses might be an issue. So somehow the model has been trained that whoever is a Polish teacher of English would wear glasses. But as you can see, with that long prompt, I managed to get quite a nice output. Right, so this is just a sort of an anecdotal introduction to prompting. I hope with that you'll remember that the longer, the more detailed prompt, the better. And myself, I had an opportunity to learn a little bit about prompting, about prompt engineering on the course called ChatGPT Prompt Engineering for Developers. And again, it's a free course. It's created by OpenAI people. So if you go just to the website called Deep Learning AI, or I may, if you want to, I may send the link in a moment, but really it's going to be in the slides. So I think you're going to find it afterwards. If you go to Deep Learning AI, you'll find the course, ChatGPT Prompt Engineering for Developers. It takes an hour. Actually, it takes a little bit longer and it requires some Python knowledge. However, you can click through the course and you may just follow what they're saying on the screen, and I'm sure you're going to profit from it anyway. The things I have learned will be shown in the next 3 slides. So the first thing that you learn on this course is that you need to give ChatGPT time to think. And later on, I'll show you a video of my colleague doing something. And this will be a heavily edited video because in between the turns, we actually had to wait a lot. So sometimes when you want a particular output, you need to give ChatGPT time to think and produce the output. Now, the second thing, it consists of several parts, is second important rule is to provide clear and specific instructions. You need to provide context. You need to provide the purpose for the task that you want ChatGPT to create. If you want a gap fill, say that you want a gap fill. If you want role play cards, say that you want role play cards. If you want a lesson plan, say that you want a lesson plan. If you want a poem, Say you want a poem. You may also specify the length of it. So specify, you could even say how many characters you like, but I think we don't need that right now, unless you're looking for 6 character, off the top of my head, 6 character words that rhyme with challenge. I don't know if ChatGPT would find these, but that's a challenge for us in the future. You may also specify for how long a given task would be. So you can say, please prepare a task for that would take 6 minutes to do. And most importantly, you need to, if you're preparing something for a given audience, you need to mention who they are. So you need to say that these are teenagers or young learners or adults. You may specify their age if you feel like it. I use CEF level, and I know that ChatGPT answers quite well to a common European framework of reference. So I usually put A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. I hope you're familiar with CEF. But I haven't, to be honest, I've tried with saying lower level students, but I find that it's better to specify the CEF because it's more concrete back then. And it's a good idea also to mention the number of learners. You can also ask it to modify the reply type. Like what I said earlier with the code explanations. If you wanted to explain code to you, it may explain it on a sort of a very highly technical level. It explains it, you read it through and you still don't understand what it says. But you may say, hey, explain like I'm 12. And actually, I use the explain like I'm 12 or explain like I'm 7 quite often for more complex things, not for pronunciation, but if there's something that you're not sure, you can tell ChatGPT to explain it that way and it will follow. And actually, I'm not going to be showing it to you, but you can try it yourself, that if you give a certain concept and you say, explain like I'm 12 or 10, it actually tells you a nice story. It's a storyteller. So the story is there and you can actually learn a lot from it. On a more technical level, you may also try to simplify your input. So you may pre-teach ChatGPT and say, whenever I use C, that will mean continue, or just simply C equals continue. And it will know that whenever you put C, for example, next time, it will continue a given theme or a given topic or so on. You may also use delimiters. I don't know, triple dashes, angular brackets or whatever, so that you may give it a task, but the task might be based on a piece of text. And you may put this text between these delimiters. So this way ChatGPT will know where the text starts and where it ends. That's a thing that people use in programming and coding. And it also plays quite well in our case. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of temperature. You may apply different temperature. Now, temperature, I don't have a screenshot for that. Temperature is the level of creativity. So generally in programming, the lowest, like sort of the creativity could be at level 0, and that's the lowest one. And creativity can be at level 1, which is the highest. So when you ask ChatGPT what temperature it's set to, at first it doesn't understand. It says, oh, no, I'm not able to tell you the weather. But then if you say, no, I mean the programming temperature, it replies with, oh, I'm actually able to provide output on various types of temperature. So in a moment, I'll show you in some examples how I applied temperature. Just remember that the lower the temperature, the less creative it is. The higher the temperature, the more creative it can become, providing the output. So that's clear and specific instructions with some tips. Then the second one, and I'm really proud to say it, fake it till you make it. The first attempt at ChatGPT, whatever you wanted to produce, probably won't work. This story of mine I'm going to tell you in a moment is also a story of failure. There is going to be one task I've been trying to make it work and it doesn't work. And it's not the first time, it's not the second time. I've been trying for a couple of weeks right now to make it work, but it doesn't work. Maybe I should try a different way. Who has an idea? Please contact me afterwards. I'll be very happy to get some prompts from you. When you get a given output from ChatGPT, analyze why you're not getting what you want. Try to refine the prompt and ask it again. Iterations, that's the thing that programmers do, and unfortunately or fortunately for us, depends on how much time you've got. Iterations is the thing that we need to follow. And the last thing is to try for us when we are inserting prompts to reduce hallucinations, the risk of hallucinations. You may want to, in order to do that, you may ask, if you're not sure about the answer, you may ask ChatGPT to clarify or to prove it to you by, just say that trace back the data in the output, provide quotes for me. or just a simple term. I like to use that phrase, fact check this for me. And ChatGPT knows that when it gets it, it knows that it has to check. And actually that phrase, fact check this for me, this is not my idea. This was presented in one of the YouTube talks by OpenAI co-founder, Greg Brockman, I think that's his name. And he actually showed live that this works. So fact check this for me clarifies some hallucinations. And if given conditions are not satisfactory, so for example, when you ask it to find rhymes to given words, and it hallucinates, you can say, what rhymes with, for example, orange? What rhymes with wolf? What rhymes with pint? I'm sorry, I had to put these images in order to remember the words, because these are the words that actually don't rhyme with anything. Did you know about that? I don't. So what rhymes with orange? Apparently nothing. But when I asked ChatGPT, and actually ChatGPT was able to say that nothing rhymes with orange, but when I asked it to what rhymes with wolf, that's how I pronounce it, it told me that golf rhymes with wolf. So you see, it hallucinated a little bit. Does it rhyme for you? I see some faces. No, Randy's saying no. Okay, good. So we know that ChatGPT hallucinated in this respect. So overall, this is all I wanted to tell you. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. But this is generally the whole prompt engineering, the whole craft behind it. Hope it's useful. There's a few great sources for prompt engineering, so-called support books. There's one created by Nick Peachy, who's really well known in the area of technology. And there's another one created by David Weller. They're no longer free, but it doesn't really cost much to get them. And they are really great. Quite a lot of prompts over there with examples. And in David Weller's case, even 3 or 4 pages related to pronunciation. So if you're interested, other than that, is just general English. And if you don't want to invest in anything, you may also remember about the framework called CREATE. This was invented by Tom Barrett quite recently. And with that, that's an acronym for clarity, relevant information, examples, avoiding ambiguity, tinkering, so iterating, and evaluating. This is how he came up with the craft. He calls it the craft, the engineering of prompts. Finally, if you feel that what I'll show you in a moment and what you got from the books is not enough, the way to optimize your prompts is to seek help from friends, people who are struggling with that too. The whole world is right now struggling. There is a Facebook group called ChatGPT for Teachers. If you'd like to join it, it already has over 179,000 people who exchange ideas. They are truly support group. There are lots of IT people over there who have, actually there's not lots of, but several cases of IT specialists, programmers, who have wives in education. I've seen a couple of cases like that. So wives or their partners are in education and they themselves don't know much about education, but they know that the partner needs to explain. They know that the partner needs a relevant thing, and they produce their own apps that use ChatGPT's API. So they are able to come up with that. And another idea for prompt optimization might be to use prompt optimizers. Generally, there are people who came up with websites with apps that are able to perfect your prompts for ChatGPT or for other language models. I know a few people who have used Prompt Perfect. Some of them were happy with that, some of them were not, but I'm just leaving that if you'd like to have a look at it and to check it for yourselves. That might be a good idea. Unfortunately, Prompt Perfect is a paid app, so you need to pay in order to generate anything. Yeah. Okay, so let's go into examples. And as I said, there will be some success stories and there'll be some not so successful stories. Okay. My questions for my exploration, there were twofold. On the one hand, I wanted to see whether ChatGPT can map onto something called communicative framework for teaching English pronunciation. I'll explain that in a moment, but it's a concept that those who teach pronunciation know quite well. It was created by Celso Mercier and others in 2010. And the second question, what I wanted to find out is, what is the potential of ChatGPT for helping teachers teach pronunciation with that framework? And I was thinking of one-to-ones, mini, large groups. Generally, I believe that if something can be done in a large group, then it can be done in one-to-one circumstances. And so these were my ideas for what I'm going to be showing you. And let's just remind ourselves what communicative framework for teaching English pronunciation is. It's a framework that consists of 5 stages. The first one is description analysis. That's when the teacher describes a given pronunciation feature or a given segmental or subsegmental feature, doesn't have to be segmental only, and demonstrates how it should be produced. And then what follows is listening discrimination. That's when the learner listens to the prompt feature and learns to recognize it. Then controlled practice. That's when we have some practice that is supplied by the teacher in the form of a book or a handout or even an app. Things like reading out, repeating words. So it's very much controlled in a controlled environment. Then we move on to guided practice, which includes more structured communication exercises, somewhat sort of free practice activity, but the learner focuses on the prompt feature and context. And then we have communicative practice. That's what ideally should look like, where we have more fluency building activities where the feature is used in a communicative way and in role plays, discussions, or some sort of conversations. And in an ideal world, if we wanted to make this framework more robust, it would be good also to add needs analysis and diagnostics at first, and then assessment feedback. And there's one more thing I forgot to add. I was thinking about it, but then I sort of, it slipped my mind, to be honest. I should have added warm-ups over here. But so if we start with needs analysis, I would say the first thing that goes for my classes, at least before description analysis, that would be warm-ups, lots of warm-ups. But to be honest, I slipped my mind and I haven't asked ChatGPT about it, but I know that it would be able to produce some suggestions. So what does ChatGPT claim it can do for teachers of pronunciation? I put that in the abstract, so I'll answer this question. It claims that it can do a lot. When you see the next slide, you're going to be, are we going to have to read all of it out? No, but this is what it actually tells you. It lists 7 things that it can do for you. And these things, don't worry, I've summarized them, are that it can explain the basic concepts of phonetics and phonology. It does, but it can hallucinate. It can provide a variety of pronunciation exercises and drills. That's for sure. You'll see that in a moment. It can generate pronunciation guides for specific words and phrases quite well. And then it says it can generate audio samples of native speakers pronouncing words or sentences correctly. And I know some of you will be like, wow, is that possible? Fabulous. ChatGPT, great. And then it says it provides feedback on students' recordings. When I read that, I was like, amazing. Certain functionalities have been added. And then it says it can recommend useful pronunciation resources and assist in lesson planning. Now, these two, as you can anticipate, this is hallucinations. It can't really do that. Or can it? Maybe in a moment we'll actually check this for ourselves. So if you're taking this answer and you're putting the communicative framework for teaching English pronunciation on top of it, you'll see that certain points refer to certain stages in the framework, but then we would probably need to put question marks next to it. So let's look at the examples. They're not perfect. Let me just say these are my explorations into ChatGPT, and I'm sure you would be much better at them. So please feel free to criticize me at the end of the talk, maybe. So take notes and let me know what you think about them. So I'll start with, it said that it can produce lesson plans, and I was really eager to check if it could actually kind of, prepare lesson plans for teaching intonation. My colleague at the University of Medical University here in Warsaw teaches medical English, but she would also like to teach intonation when she's teaching that. And she said, Beata, let's check intonation. So the first prompt that I put in was just help me, or you could just, politeness. I should have mentioned one more thing, sorry. Try to be polite with ChatGPT. You never know how, where we will go in 5 years' time, matrix and situations. Sorry, this is just a joke, of course, but politeness is a good idea. But so you don't have to be polite, but it's nice to be polite. So I asked it to devise a lesson for teaching intonation, and you'll see what came out of it in a moment. And then following what it produced, I asked it to provide me handouts that will list the examples necessary to conduct this lesson plan. So you know already that it did create a lesson plan. And I had to specify the handouts. I had to specify that handout 1 is for young learners in this case, age this and that it would have to be a particular CEF vocabulary range. And I also used one for teenagers, and I used one for adults. And then a third prompt followed for the table. And in this case, I wanted it to present the handouts as a table. You'll see that in a little video in a second. So let's have a look. I hope this is clear to some extent. So as you can see at the top, the blue one, this is me. I'm saying, help me devise a lesson plan for teaching intonation. Very useful clue. And this is what it produces. Take a look at the amount of text that is being produced. We're getting a lesson plan with duration, materials.
1. Bone. 2.
Procedure.
Cone. 3. Drone. 4. Phone. 5.
I'm sorry.
Stone. 6. 7. Zone. 8. Throne. 9. Clone. 10.
Sorry, this is Canva just hallucinating a little. So we've got the procedure with the warm-up. So you see, I didn't have to specify that it has to have a warm-up. We've got introduction to intonation, and it says that the teacher will have to spend 10 minutes explaining that intonation refers to the rises and falls of the pitch of spoken language, and give some examples. Then the third point on the lesson plan is intonation patterns. It says that it will take us 20 minutes to introduce common intonation patterns in English, and it lists those patterns. And then it says that we can play audio recordings, and we need to provide examples of each pattern and ask students to practice saying them out loud. Then there is a chance for intonation in context, which, that's for intonation patterns. Then there's a chance for intonation in context, which takes 15 minutes. And in here, ChatGPT says that we need to provide each group with a short dialogue. And then it asks to practice these dialogues. Following up, there's intonation practice that takes 10 minutes, and the wrap up and reflection. So when I got this from ChatGPT, I noticed one interesting thing. It gives me a lesson plan. It talks about audio recordings, and it also talks about handouts and examples. So what I asked, as I said, it was to provide 3 handouts that would list all the examples necessary to conduct the points that ChatGPT listed. And I specified what the handouts should be about. Let me just show it to you once again. I wanted a handout for young learners of English aged 9 to 10, A1 vocabulary range. I wanted a second handout for teenagers aged 16, B1 level. And I wanted a handout number 3 for adults. That's with the medical English students in mind, sort of. And it did produce those handouts. And as you can see, I've got handout 1 and then intonation patterns. So handout 2 with the intonation patterns again and examples, and handout 3. But this wasn't too clear for me because it was like linear text. So what I decided was to ask it to present the above handouts as a table, which I think is much clearer when you're getting output from ChatGPT. I said, present the above handouts as a table with 4 columns. Column 1 should be the intonation pattern, columns 2 to 4, that's the handouts, and include all relevant subcategories. So have a look, that's what it produced. Oh, sorry, let's just go below. Yeah, there you go. And we have handouts right now ready to copy paste into a spreadsheet, for example, or into Canva to be adapted into nice handouts. Canva could reproduce it. It always adds additional notes that the table includes for intonation patterns, but that sometimes it adds a note that the teacher should create something of their own in order to make sure that this actually corresponds to the teacher's needs. How do you like it so far? I think it's quite a useful functionality to know that you can present data as a table. At least in my mind likes those. So here you go, you got lesson plan. I did follow up with a question about audio, but it did say that it wasn't able to produce them, of course. For description analysis, a simple task, so getting out of the lesson plans and moving on to the Sells and Mercier's framework, description analysis, that's when the teacher describes the prompt feature. Well, can ChatGPT do that? Simple question as how to pronounce something or how to pronounce something and explain, asking ChatGPT to explain it using IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. I asked it in terms of like, this is connected to the medical English students. I asked it to pronounce the word orofacial. And here you can see already, you see the familiar green face that it does actually hallucinate a little. It says that oro is the first syllable and it rhymes with sorrow or borrow. It got the rhyme correct, but I'm pretty sure that oro is 2 syllables. Not sure if you agree, but I would say that it is. But the rest is quite understandable. I did manage to prompt ChatGPT about the transcription, the notation system that it uses, and it says it was trained with various systems, and this one does not come from any specific dictionary. But I suspect that it was trained with a lexicon that included lots of data, and it figured out that this is how it should be explained for someone who doesn't know phonetic alphabet. However, if you're fans of phonetic alphabet, this is what you can get if you ask it to explain a given term or how to pronounce a given word using IPA. But again, it hallucinates as far as the first syllable is concerned. Somehow oro is one syllable to it. But you've got nicely explained, even if someone doesn't read IPA, they got additional comments from ChatGPT that, for example, second syllable over here begins with the fey sound, similar to the word fey or day. So it still uses the approach of rhymes. So that's one. Surprise. So that was, by the way, that was GPT 3.5, so the default model. If you ask ChatGPT 4 about this word, it does actually provide a shorter answer. It's not happy to give anything long, but it just says that oro sounds like oro and facial sounds like facial, with the emphasis on the first syllable fey. Interestingly, it doesn't hallucinate anymore, so we can see that it was trained with more data. For listening discrimination, the question that we could ask ourselves, or general, the creators of ChatGPT, is whether ChatGPT can actually generate audio samples, because for the listener to be able to listen to the prompt feature, either the teacher or the AI tutor, meaning the ChatGPT, someone would have to generate it, produce it. Well, as you probably expect, that's not possible. However, there is a solution. So if I ask it to list 10 words that rhyme with scone, and I would like my student to be able to listen to them and repeat, then it lists those words. What is interesting, and I know some of you would like it very much, is that it says that the accent, pronunciation and accent may vary. So the exact rhyme might differ depending on the specific dialect or accent. So look, it's already trained on the varieties of English. So it does know that in certain words, these words won't rhyme. But we can also use another functionality here to make it say these words. And I think I messed up with the slides. I'm sorry for that, but you heard them earlier on when ChatGPT, when I was on the previous slide. For that, I used a plugin. So like I said, I have access to ChatGPT Plus and the plugins that are connected to it. And so I've installed a few, and one of them is a plugin called SpeechKey. Actually, there are only two plugins related to speaking for the time being. One of them is called SpeechKey, and the other one is called Speak. Speak produces dialogues, but it doesn't really produce any audio. And SpeechKey is the only one which does text-to-speech. So what you need to do, what you need to put into, but provided that you're using ChatGPT Plus, what you need to put as a prompt is SpeechKey, read these words out. And in a moment, that's what appears on the screen. It takes about, I would say, 30 seconds for it to generate, depending on how much it has to read. The audio file is generated on a website. It says, click here to listen to it. You go into that website. Oh, and it generates a report where you can report an issue if it doesn't work. And you go into the website, which says your audio is ready, listen and share. You may download this audio or share it in your social media if you like. There's also, you can't see it right now, but you may also speed up the audio and regulate the voice volume. Like I promised, maybe we could listen to it once again. Give me a second. So this is what it produces.
One, bone, 2. Cone, 3. Drone, 4. Phone, 5. Stone, 6. Alone, 7. Zone, 8. Throne, 9. Clone, 10. Tone, 1, bone, 2.
And so on. Sorry, it just looped. So you've got access to, if you do have access to ChatGPT Plus, you may as well ask it to read out words, it could be sentences, it could be whole text, but it does sound artificial. There are only 2 English voices available. There's Christopher, you've heard, and the other one, I forgot the name, a female voice, TTS female voice. So this is what it can produce. You may also try with Spanish if you want to. It does produce Spanish too. So this is an alternative sort of to, if you would like ChatGPT to produce some audio, that would be, with the speech key plugin, provided that you use ChatGPT Plus. For controlled practice, that's when the learner practices language and the teacher supplies the learner with different handouts that may consist of reading out tasks, repeating tasks, and generally the attention of the learner is focused on form. I've used a prompt for the ChatGPT to come up with a tongue twister with the word, and here I specified the word. And I also used the idea of temperature, something I've mentioned earlier. So I asked it to please note that at temperature 0.2, so 0.2, I would like it to use vocabulary characteristic of A2. So not only is it A2 level vocabulary, but it shouldn't be too creative. It should be quite simple, basic vocabulary. And then at temperature 0.8, it needs to use a vocabulary characteristic of C1, more creative level. When I asked it the first time, here is the prompt. What it produced, it at A2 level, I don't know if you can see it, but the tongue twister is orofacial challenges, tongue twisters and thrall, try it all. I'm sure that A2 level students would be familiar with these words. I don't even know if I am. And then at level C1, get this, intricate orofacial enigmas exemplify linguistic finesse. I struggled a lot to read it out, but then I used the speech key and it told me how to read it. So yeah, the first attempt, like I said, the first attempt was not successful, and I don't think that ChatGPT understood. But then I asked to revise it once again, so I basically see, could you please revise it? I'm not sure if the level is appropriate. And then what I got, orofacial issues, tricky phrases, give it gazes. Again, it wasn't too successful. Complex orofacial conundrums showcase linguistic finesse. That was really creative here. But I still think that this is because I use the word orofacial. I've tried it with simpler words like dog, boat, ball, and it can actually produce quite nice tongue twisters. Rhyming verses. It can also produce rhyming verses. So if you ask it to come up with a short poem or a limerick or something rhyming, you see, I just said something rhyming that will help my teenage learners remember how to pronounce orofacial. It did produce a rhyming verse, quite an advanced one. But then I did ask for a simpler piece and it produced this one. And I think this is actually a simple rhyming phrase that could be used with any word in the English language. So, hear it clear, let it cheer. In this case, orofacial, hear it clear, orofacial, let it cheer. So as you can see, it can simplify the output that it produces. 2-part dialogues. When I was doing these tongue twisters, I said, what if I ask you to do the same, but drop tongue twisters and use 2-part dialogues? So we could also ask, create 2-part dialogues with the same words. And I kept the same temperature. And here you go. That's what I got. That's what I got. It produced there at the bottom here because I had to answer its question because it wanted me to provide a desired temperature. So what I got was a dialogue at A2 level. Have you heard of orofacial exercises? Yes, they help with facial muscles and expressions. And then at the C1 level, I got a more advanced dialogue. What are your thoughts on orofacial myofunctional therapy? And then person B replies with that, giving a much more a complex answer. This is good for reading out. Probably the ones that are more advanced does require some, not probably, but they do require some pre-preparation, checking with ChatGPT how to pronounce certain words, like myofunctional. But I think this was quite successful. Since 2-part dialogues were successful, I wanted to check whether it is possible to produce 6-part dialogues, and it does prepare 6-part dialogues. I'm sure that you would, if you asked for 12-part dialogues, it would be also able to produce them. So again, the prompt was, the guidelines are the same, but this time I want 6-part dialogues. So you can modify your earlier input, and it does remember your earlier prompt, and it does remember those features look, we've got quite a clever dialogue for A2 level. It's quite a simple one. And then for C1, that's quite an advanced one. What I didn't like, though, in this dialogue was the fact that I couldn't find the orofacial in it. So I asked it to put orofacial in block letters, and it did show me where it was. So I could have asked already at the beginning, I could have asked to put the orofacial in block letters, but this way it did that for me quite nicely. And then I was thinking, okay, but I'm interested, my colleague from medical university is interested in marking final intonation. Now, these are sentences provided by ChatGPT. It would take me a moment to figure out the intonation patterns probably in here. So I asked it to mark the final intonation. Since I'm already using ChatGPT, why not? So I said, in the dialogues below, mark final intonation so that the learners know how to read them out. And I wanted straight away, I'm a fan of tables. I hope some of you will become fans of tables right now, tables from ChatGPT. I asked it to present the tones in a 3-column table with relevant headings. And then I provided the dialogues once again, in case it forgot. So here you go. That's the beginning of my task. And this is what it produced. So you get the same 6-tone dialogues, but presented as a table with the final tone. I'm not really sure what it meant by neutral in this respect. Could that be a little bit of hallucination? Perhaps. But I think it was quite successful. Other than that, the statements got a falling tone, and there's a question with a rising tone, but then you should consider consulting an orofacial specialist. Probably it got rising tone because there is some doubt. There's some approach to that like that. If you're not familiar with, like, if you wanted to offer your students more practice, probably you could do it with speech key, like so that they can listen to the sentence being read out. And if you wanted them to trace those tones, you could probably do it with pitch. This is an external tool for pitch display, but that's for another presentation. And then my friend from Medical Academy give me a challenge, and this is going to be the not so successful story. We wanted to create an information gap activity that is related to orofacial myofunctional therapy. So the prompt, at least the first attempt, was to design an information gap activity for a pair of medical English learners who are B2 level. And I wanted ChatGPT to make sure that the phrase orofacial or myofunctional therapy is used several times. And I gave it the time for the activity. So there was a lot of hallucinations over here, because at some point I got a table, 2 handouts for student A and student B, which looked like an information gap activity, but there would be no chance for the students to answer what is missing in the gaps, because that would require quite a lot of background knowledge. And then I tried to modify the prompt. That's my prompt, quite modified, quite advanced, quite detailed. And then I got something which did look like a schedule for 2 therapists consulting when to have orofacial therapy with their patients, but the hours were completely wrong. So there would be no logical way to conduct this exercise. So I'm afraid that as far as information gap activities, if you attempted to do though, you'd have to try yourself. But for now, ChatGPT itself is not able to produce these. As a side effect, it is actually, when I was doing this exploration, actually managed to produce some fluency building activities. So it was able to, I asked it to design an information gap activity for a pair of medical English learners. And then it actually gave me quite a nice activity description for a task where 2 students are speech therapists and they are talking about their patients. And they have some role cards, which I asked to prepare in a form of a table. Speaking of role cards, ChatGPT is also able to produce role play cards. And here is the prompt. I asked it to create role play cards for, again, relevant students, and each card should represent a different perspective and include a brief description of the viewpoint, possible opinions and questions to ask during the discussion. So you see the prompt is quite detailed. And again, I'm sorry, I'm crazy as far as the tables are concerned, but I wanted to present those role play cards as the table. So it did. we have four role play cards, one for each person. And here's the description of the role, their possible opinions, and the possible questions to ask. So that could be nicely adapted into a activity where you have four people and each of them has their own card to practice a given word or a phrase in context. Since we're speaking about communicative practice opportunity, right now there's a possibility for the learner to have some form, and really I'm explaining some form of communicative practice with the ChatGPT mobile app, using the speech-to-text or voice dictation functionality in ChatGPT. So you download onto your iOSs, you download ChatGPT app, and it has a built-in STT, speech-to-text function. And the person is able to speak to ChatGPT, the text appears on the screen, and ChatGPT replies in the form of text. So it doesn't reply orally, but it just produces text that you can read out and then produce your answer. This written text, what you produce, is some sort of opportunity for some pronunciation feedback. But just remember that automatic speech recognition actually goes for rough approximations to some extent. And so it may not be a great piece of for analysis to an extent. Of course, it depends on what the learner is saying. But again, the limitation would be that it requires specific prompting and it's for iOS only. So for a while, I wasn't, actually it was released about a week ago, the ChatGPT app. And I wasn't able this week to practice until I found a friend of mine who is right now in Romania, Sam Stevenson, thank you very much for that, who agreed to test it with me and just to show it to you.
I'd like to role play a dialogue with you. You are a physiotherapist and I'm your patient interested in your services. Ask me one question first and I'll reply. Based on my answer, ask me the next question and so on. Limit yourself to only one response or question at a time. Do you understand?
And here's ChatGPT producing the answer. But really, it took it about 40 seconds.
You need to ask me a question first. This is my first time seeking physiotherapy. I have a problem with my jaw. It hurts when I chew. I'm not entirely sure what a temporomandibular joint is. But no trauma or recent injury.
So it explains what TMJ is.
No, none of those problems.
Gives more feedback.
Yes, lovely. But I'll be in touch to schedule a physical assessment. Thank you.
It ends the conversation.
Goodbye.
Yeah, that's a typical ChatGPT. It has to say goodbye, but then it has to add one more or two more sentences to that, just saying that you can always come back to it. I hope you liked it. So this is freshly recorded. The original recording was about 4.5 minutes long. So it was largely the internet that was the problem here. But in the initial, the first response to the first prompt took ChatGPT about 40 seconds. But as it went, it was much better to produce these responses. And in a way, Sam was able to have some sort of a conversation with it. I imagine that this technology will be improved, and in the future there'll be a possibility. I mean, I know that they're working on releasing the app for Android, and maybe with time there'll be more opportunity to use that. So this is using the functionality, the speech-to-text functionality on the phone in the ChatGPT app. Okay, so the potential for ChatGPT is quite large. It can do description analysis, controlled practice, somewhat communicative practice, and it can create lesson plans. But as far as the rest, Not necessarily, not to a large extent, although or not yet. So when ChatGPT can't do certain things, I'm afraid that I may need a few more minutes longer, but when ChatGPT can't do it, you may actually resort to AI integration. So there are quite a lot of companies right now. I don't know, since ChatGPT 3.5 has been released, there have been hundreds of them right now who are using ChatGPT or using GPT models and integrating them into their technologies, and they offer more tailored experience as far as speaking practice is concerned, and the opportunity to get some feedback or diagnostics from the speech that we produce. There is a potential also for developing listening skills with them. And so learners may want to explore these external apps and tools. I've got a few examples for you. First one is something that I haven't used a lot. It's the app called Speak. It's called Speak AI Tutor. The problem is that it's still not really available. I've only, there is an app called Speak, but it doesn't have this functionality yet. And we're still waiting. I've signed up for the beta and I'm waiting for it to be released. So they're using the GPT models, they're cooperating with OpenAI, and they're promising an app, AI tutor, that will be able to speak to the learner, to the user, and provide feedback, provide answers, what you just saw while Sam was speaking to ChatGPT, but in lots of contextual activities and functioning much better in a much better way. So that's Speak AI Tutor. Now, ELSA last year released speech analyzer that maybe some of you have heard about before. And right now they're working on a voice AI tutor. The voice AI tutor, that's the images on the right-hand side. This has been only announced on ELSA Speak's blog. And it doesn't seem to be, they're describing it as a role-play based AI technology that will enable speaking for the user, as well as pronunciation feedback. So assessment of the learner's phrasing, fluency, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. That's what I know based from the public information has been released. The new features that ELSA is promising is voice-based interaction. That's when the AI tutor will guide the learner through their learning in an interactive way. The learner will be able to choose their adventure, the situation or the topic, and then the tutor the AI tutor will generate conversation with the learner based on the role play scenario. And then there's another functionality called Ask ELSA Anything. That's for real-time questions related to some speaking challenges. Basically, it's a pronunciation one-to-one teacher. And they are saying that there's a lot of work going on and they're getting ready and it's going to be released soon. So this is something quite promising. And then the speech analyzer was a tool that was released last year. It also uses AI technology, and it has lots of opportunities for practice for the learner. I here recorded for you just an example of what it looks like inside. You need to register and pay for access, of course, in this respect, but you are asked, for example, you may choose to be asked some questions from, for example, food area, and you need to answer them.
I'm not entirely sure. I suppose it's pierogi, which is kind of a popular dish here in Poland. It's those little parcels filled with meat or cheese and onion, or white cheese and onion, or fruit like
This is me recording it especially for you, just to show you how it works. I was supposed to talk about my favorite food, one of the most difficult questions in the world, I suppose. And there are 4 other questions that follow. Once you answer these questions, you end up with the analysis of your speaking performance. And here you get percentage assessment on pronunciation, intonation, fluency, grammar, and vocabulary, and specific areas. You may check for the words in which you made a mistake, listen to how they would be pronounced as the model would say it, and how you pronounce it, so you can hear how it should be done. And
Strawberries.
yeah, strawberries, that's not the way I would probably say it. I say it's strawberries, so I'm a little bit penalized for the way I speak in here. There's also feedback on intonation, fluency, grammar, and vocabulary. So this is the speech analyzer, which is also a great chance to offer some feedback to the students in individual practice. And the last thing is TWE. If you don't mind me just taking one more minute of your precious time before I could just go into pedagogical implications. That's a new tool, again, which I think is great, and it's great for listening activities and for speaking.
You know, when I was a kid.
Let me just explain what is happening. It is an automatic generator of anything, actually, for teaching in a classroom. So in this case, you may use the listening functionality, where you provide a link to YouTube. You select an extract from the YouTube video, and on the basis of that, so this is the extract. It's about catification and Jackson Galaxy.
Cat Daddy Dictionary with your host, Jackson. Cat Daddy Dictionary.
So it gets repeated in here. And within 3 seconds, I don't know if you've noticed, that was that quick. It transcribed the video, the relevant portion of the video that I selected, and then it suggests other activities on the basis of that. I choose fill in the gap. I get a transcript of the text. I can delete certain portions of the text. I can select some words that I'm interested in, and in this case, for word stress, I'm interested in catification. So I'm getting rid of some text. Highlighting catification as the keywords, and I ask it to do the magic. It produces a gap fill, and then another opportunity for me is another option is to create a dialogue on the topic of catification. Have a look at this. I just ask it to focus on catification. 1, 2, 3. It produces a dialogue, a completely new dialogue between two people on catification. There is no audio, but this is a brilliant chance for controlled practice activities where the dialogue is like created within, I don't know, it takes what, 10 seconds to create a really brilliant dialogue. And TWE.com is a new thing on the market. It's getting the hype. It's getting more interest from a lot of language learners. And I think there is also a potential. There is no section called pronunciation. Perhaps we could suggest something to them, but there is a lot of potential for them over there. Yeah, and my name, sorry, at the end. So for pedagogical implications, I'd like to leave you just with this slide. You've already seen the final slide, but it's okay. I think that ChatGPT is a valuable tool, but it does have some limitations, and it can hallucinate, as we've already noticed. But to some extent, it can reduce our workload, provided that we prompt it appropriately. And the prompt engineering is the most timely thing that you need to, the most timely aspect of it. I think it's a good solution, a good partner for brainstorming for us teachers on how to devise activities and lesson plans and what to teach. But we need to be mindful of the output that it produces. With the speech-to-text functionality, there's a huge chance for individuals in the future to have more speaking practice, individual speaking practice opportunity, which is so important for large groups, for example, for a speaking opportunity in large groups. But I think that more and more tools that are available in the market will actually go towards the automatic speech recognition, and they will offer more chance for some diagnostics and feedback. I'm not sure what the future will bring, but I think the future will belong to spoken communication with AI. So my tip for you is to surf the AI wave, but be a little cautious. I don't think we should ban the AI, but we should embrace it, but to some extent be quite critical of it. So I'd like to leave you with that thought. So here are my references, and here's a big thank you. And just before you go, I wanted to make a small announcement, if you don't mind. Patryk said at the beginning that I am a member of PRONSIG, and we're going to be organizing a conference to which we invite you already this autumn. But for now, we're choosing the theme of the conference, and we would like all people who are interested in pronunciation to take part in it. So if you'd like to go to the PRONSIG IATEFL.org website and vote on one of the themes, just click one of them. That would be great to help us I myself am very interested in theme number 3, but okay, that's me. Gemma is going to look at me funny because I'm interested in new and future trends in pronunciation. But if you're interested in musical pronunciation or young learners pronunciation, young learners, you can choose that theme over there. So thank you very much. And that's all from me. And I'm sorry I've taken up 5 minutes of your precious time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beata. I think it's time we give a huge round of applause to our presenter for this incredibly thorough and practical speech. And we do still have about 7 minutes to go. So if Beata, you're willing to invite questions, and then I think we can do a short Q&A based on your topic.
Yes, I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. I can stay longer, don't worry. Tell me if that was useful at all. Maybe I can ask you a question. Was that useful at least a little bit, maybe? Oh, that's great. It's great to know. Any questions?
So if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them directly to Beata, or write them down in the chat.
Hi, Beata. Hi, I'm curious, with all you know, because you know a great deal more than I do, certainly. What do you see, down the road as the role that teachers, the people, will continue to have? What's the vital piece that will provide? And I know the answer can seem obvious, but I'm curious, to hear your take on it.
I'm interested in mobile apps, and whenever I talk about mobile apps, I like to quote 2015's quote by Darwin and Monroe, that the role of the teacher is to, and this is funny, I don't remember the quote right now, but the role of the teacher is to show the technology and to guide the learner, to give the learner the voice, but also to guide the learner and to be able to determine what is right and what is wrong to some extent. I mean, to experiment first on the teacher herself or himself experiments first, browses through a lot of tools and directs the learner to the right program, to the right application. So I think we can be guides as teachers to some extent. I don't really think that we will be substituted by AI, if maybe this is where this may be going. Although I see that a lot of these companies are desperate to invent the ideal pronunciation or speaking tutor. So a sort of a substitute, but I think we will never be substituted. No, never. Come on, never. We're really important. And if you remember what was happening during the pandemic, a lot of people back then were praying to come back to school and not really kind of continuing education online. And I think a lot of people will appreciate teachers much more, even when those technologies will be much more advanced. They will appreciate the contact that you have with the teacher and the fact that you can have psychological support from the teacher. But again, that's another piece of technology. There are people who are working on psychological AI tutors, so support tutors. So this is it. Myself, I would never substitute the teacher for AI, but I think AI can help us. It should alleviate the workload, as I said, but for now, it requires a lot of, prompting and a lot of input. But I think that's just because it's the start. Imagine if the brainwave technology, brainwave AI goes forward, perhaps we will be in a year's time, maybe not 2 years from now, I'll be giving, I don't know if I'll be giving that webinar anymore, actually. We'll be learning about, we'll not be learning, we'll be using technology which can read our brainwaves to create a pronunciation task. I don't know if I've answered the question the right way, but I think it can go anyway, to be honest. I'm really trying to embrace it, but there's so much that I really don't know a lot. I think I only know like the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is down there. There's a lot ahead of us. Have I answered your question? I'm sorry, tell me.
No, it's a great start. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions?
If I may. So you're talking about like online coursework. We have hybrid classes where we still have perhaps like listening questions or a listening assessment online where a student hears a question, records. Do you think the current state of AI makes it such that it's potentially possible then that that's going to confound our ability then to assess a student's spoken response to listening if AI can, sleuth out or interpret correctly spoken speech? And can you think of any, knowing AI and its vulnerabilities, can you think of any recommendations that teachers should consider if we are going to post whether formative or summative assessment online?
Well, as far as assessment is concerned, ELSA is one of the apps that does it. But again, remember that it's based on a lot of training and bespoke technologies. There are a few other applications which are very similar. Some of them copy directly from ELSA. That's interesting to see an idea in ELSA and then to see it in another app. Assessment, I think assessment, we're still not there. But I was thinking when you were asking a question, I thought one of the things that I'm missing in the assessment in all the technologies is that I'm missing the backbench for the teacher. I mean, sort of the back end. So the ability for the teacher to, for example, give the students chance to practice and then in real time to be able to monitor that and to see the feedback for all the students. I'm not saying at once, but like in a pronunciation lab, I don't know if you've been using pronunciation labs. So the one that I was working at, we had a brilliant opportunity to be able to press the buttons on. That was a physical pronunciation lab where we were able to listen to how students were practicing in pairs or in threes. And I was able to press with a press of a button. I was able to jump from one couple to another, one pair to another. And then I was able to listen to how they pronounce and then write down the feedback and then provide them with the feedback, either via speakers or afterwards in the classroom. I don't think that the technologies right now are able to do that. I haven't heard of a tool that does that, so that provides assessment. So like I would imagine a class of 20, let's say, students, even online, I give them an assignment and they, for example, need to work in their breakout rooms and have some activity. And I would be able to kind of monitor what they're doing, see the output and for AI to be able to assess it for me. And then I would only kind of proofread it for the AI. I don't know if I'm making sense. So that technology would be great if that existed, but I don't know what happened. I don't think it's happening yet. I would be very tempted to see how it would work out, but I hope that answers the question to some extent. The problem, one more thing, I think with those AI technologies, they're all user-oriented. So, and the user is important, the experience of the user, but monetization is also the key for the technology to exist. So if you count how many teachers there are in the world and how many individual learners there are in the world, you probably see that it pays off more to create technology for the individual user, for the learner, than for the teacher. Probably it would be the university or schools that would have to cover licensing for access of the teacher to such backends. I don't know if I'm using the right word in here. So for such platforms that would show us what the students are doing, for a group of students, what they're doing at a given time. So it would be great if those companies created such platforms, but I don't know if it pays off to them, that would be institutional licenses in this respect. So that might be a thing to think about. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry, because I feel that I maybe not.
Yes. But I was also asking though from the angle of, because we already see students using AI inappropriately to game like writing assessments online, right? Whether it be a paper or so forth. And I guess the question as well is, could these technologies impact, let's say I have I want the student to speak in response to an oral cue and record the response online. Could these technologies be used to make that problematic, where AI is actually listening and determining what something means, even though the student didn't actually understand? So my ability to test students' comprehension of spoken language could be confounded. That was part of the angle, but yeah, thank you for your.
Yeah, just one more comment. I didn't, Patryk, let me just one more thing. Let's not forget, sorry, don't be upset with me, but there's one more thing I just wanted to add. Let's not forget about voice cloning technologies. And in this context, this is also a relevant thing to remember about. Voice cloning right now is a really capable technology. And I think within a year, we're going to experience much more. So just remember that you can pre-train technology with a little sample of your voice and produce anything. Imagine what would happen if you were able to give it your voice and then ChatGPT invent the answer for the teacher and perfect pronunciation produced in this way. Yeah, there you go. So this is also something that we have to think about.
Thank you so much for your question, Robert, and your answer, Beata. Unfortunately, we're going to have to formally close today's meeting.